Welcome to the IIBA Tampa Bay, Florida chapter study group. This is our 143rd class. Today we have a guest speaker, Pam Paterson, is going to talk about how to make your stakeholders talk, techniques from professional interviewers. I'm particularly excited about this because stakeholder management is something that many of us struggle with. Even if you've done it for a long time, sometimes you get thrown the curveball. And I'm sure that you're going to glean some important, interesting things from this. My name is Thea Soren. I'm the president of this IIBA chapter in Tampa Bay. I'm also the vice president of career and professional development. All those important words mean I'm here to help you. It's my job to help you. If you need guidance, review, whatever you need, you are welcome to contact me through LinkedIn. I'm also the founder of the BA Force Multiplier Movement. I'm one of the authors of the BA Body of Knowledge, Business Analysis Body of Knowledge version 3. I'm also one of the authors, along with Alicia and Esther of this board, of the Business Analysis Bridging the Gap Between Industries. We finished our first book. We're working on our second. Very excited about that. We like to celebrate our wins. The folks in red are people that have gone on to lead other chapters, and the folks in green either lead our chapter currently or they have led our chapter. All of these folks have been members of our study group. They have said that because of our study group, they were able to get their certifications. We know that certifications typically, on average, mean that you get a pay raise of about 12%. So if we can help make your life better, that's what we want to do. Reach out to us. This is our leadership. We have several new members that are coming on board, and these are the people that are leading our chapter. And so reach out to them and say thank you. I really appreciate them. The nominees for 2024 IIBA Volunteer of the Year for the Southeast region is a majority of our board. So that's a big victory for us. And Robert Churchill was one of 3 finalists. And so we're very, very proud of that. We have members all over the world. And because we're in Florida, you can see the hurricane line there. We don't care where you live. You can be a member of our chapter if your local chapter is closed, if they're not active, whatever they are. If we are giving you what you need, you can be a member of our chapter. So you can reach out to us. Tampa Bay can be your chapter. We give you several ways to reach out to us. This is our normal Thursday night study group. We have it every single week from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. We will be taking off from Thanksgiving through the end of the year and then starting again next year. We do have meeting recordings. We have 140 hours of meeting recordings on YouTube. So you can reach out and watch them on YouTube. However, wading through those YouTube videos is kind of cumbersome. I encourage you to look at Bob's incredible index at rpchurchill.com. It's right here. rpchurchill.com. If you look at the Tampa Bay heading, he has an index where you can literally find it by topic and just jump to that video. It's awesome. We also have an IIBA chapter website at TampaBay.IIBA.org, and we have a LinkedIn channel. Bob and Esther are our study group advisors. Excuse me. They have both earned their CBAP certification, and they have kindly contributed to our continuing study groups. So we really do appreciate them. If you live anywhere in Florida and you would like to have other BAs to meet with, we are opening some branches. We need to find out where you are, though. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. We have emerging professionals. These are college students who would like to graduate college with not only a degree, but also being a member of a professional organization. Puts you head and shoulders above everybody else with just a degree. How about if you also have a professional organization certification? We want to help you succeed. So reach out to our Director of Emerging Professionals, and we will get you started there. I want to talk about the elephant in the room. We have BAs who are ready to work, and I am getting contacted by recruiters on a daily basis. I'm going to play BA Matchmaker some more. If you need a job, reach out to me through LinkedIn. If you know of jobs, reach out to me through LinkedIn. I will do my very best to get people connected to the jobs, give them information about the jobs that you give me. I don't play favorites. I try to help every single person God puts in front of me. We have a couple of associations that we're partnering with. One of them is is the Tampa Bay Women in Agile, Tampa WIA, and the other one is Tampa Bay Product Group. We're also working with the Tampa Technology Council. The IIBA Ireland chapter and the IIBA Philippines chapter, I've just finished giving them I think it's a 14-week study group each. And we are partnering also with the Bluegrass chapter, who honestly, they are mentoring us more than we're partnering with them, but hopefully we can be of use to them too. Watermark Learning has given us a discount code of 40%, which is a pretty good hunk off of all of their products. That is the business analysis, project management, and I think they've got another field. This is their courses, their books, their flashcards, anything you want. And you know, if you've been here for a little while, our practice test questions come from Watermark Learning. So you are welcome to use that. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. Adaptive US also has given us a 20% off of their products. This is all of their live classes and on-demand courses, excluding the IIBA exam vouchers. Their profit margin is so low, their prices are pretty darn good. And they also offer the guarantee. If you don't pass your certification the first time, they will pay the fee for you to take it a second time. If you don't pass it the second time, they will pay the fee for you to take it a third time. They sincerely believe that what they're providing is successful enough that you'll be able to pass your certification. That's pretty good endorsement. As many of you know, the IIBA certifications, there are 7 of them. These top 3 are certifications based on the business analysis body of knowledge. These bottom are based on other books that they put out, and they're quite interesting. But what you may not know is now through the end of the year, there's a 20% rebate on any exam that you not only book now, but you take by December 30th. So this is a great offer if you're interested in taking any of these certifications. These bottom the books are 120 to 150 pages. It's not a huge book. It's not a 500-page book like these 3 on the top. So if you're interested in any of these, now might be a good time to invest if you have the bandwidth. Today, we have Pam Paterson. Let me read part of this to you. I'm not going to read it all to you. This session is covering how to create a structured communication flow that encourages productive input without letting discussions spiral out of control. Techniques for eliciting timely and relevant stakeholder feedback. Methods to create safe and open environment for honest communication. Tools and practices to keep conversations focused on and on track. Strategies to maintain and limit unproductive or excessive stakeholder input. That's probably the thing I want most help on. And then balancing diverse perspectives to enhance project outcomes without compromising efficiency. We will be equipped with practical strategies to ensure our stakeholders provide us valuable contributions at the right times while maintaining the focus and momentum of our projects. I'm so excited about this. I cannot tell you this. Next week, we are having our final meeting of the year. Now, our final meeting of the year is our annual general meeting. We have to do this once a year. We want your input. We are going to ask our members to vote for these folks that have been working the jobs, but they weren't voted in. They were appointed in. We want them to be official. We're going to talk about all the things we've gotten done for the chapter this year. And we're going to talk about what we're planning on doing early this next year and get your input. Then we are going to have a break. November 15th through December 31st, we are taking a break. We've been doing this. Bob reminded me I've been doing this for a little over 3 years, every single week. And so the end of the year is a good break. Next year, our very first meeting is going to be a social hour. It is literally going to be social hour and games. We're going to enjoy ourselves and catch up with each other. You know, we meet every single week. We miss each other whenever we don't get to meet. So we're going to do that. And so now I'm going to turn the screen over to our presenter, Pamela. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Thea. And this chapter is, wow, you guys are going like gangbusters. You're doing so much and all the job help for everybody. It's really, really impressive. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you.
And kudos to you for caring about other people. A lot going on in the world these days. Um, okay, so can you see my screen okay?
We can see it. Thank you.
Thank you. And at the end of this session, if we have time, we're going to talk a little bit about jobs and how to get past those HR bots. Very few people have seen the inside of those bots, but I have, and I'd like to tell you about it. So welcome to this session about how to make your stakeholders talk. I have a background in journalism, chemistry, engineering. I taught college for many years in project management. I also have a new book coming out in early 2025 about interviewing stakeholders, published by the International Institute of Business Analysis, IIBA. So look for that. Navigating stakeholder communication, it's a really critical skill in IT and as a business analyst, but it's like walking a tightrope, isn't it? And that perfect balance between encouraging stakeholders to share their insights when needed and ensuring that they don't overwhelm the process at other times, it's a nuanced challenge. And it's two polar opposites of the same problem. And there might be some logical reasons why stakeholders don't talk enough or they talk too much. That's the other problem. Most people are trying to do their job in the best way possible. There might be communication differences, cultural differences, emotional reasons, nervousness, intimidated, having a bad day, and personality reasons, just different reasons. But whatever the reason, it doesn't really matter. So what matters is that we can manage these stakeholders in our meeting, get the information that we need, and there's a lot that we can do around that. And that's kind of the beauty of these techniques, is how much is within our control. So the question is, what can we do? Because we need information from our stakeholders, but we're always running out of time. We need to manage difficult personalities sometimes. We're faced with the pressures of deadlines. So what can we do? I'm going to show you 5 different ways to make stakeholders talk. The first one is to set the mood and the tone. And Thea is a master in this. I mean, I heard the enthusiasm, the energy, the positivity. She really set the tone for this meeting. And in terms of what you can do, it's about thinking very deliberately about the tone that you want to set. So if you're going to have a long, casual conversation or a short, fast meeting, set the tone. Use word cues and tone of voice. So, for example, we have a lot to go through today, so let's get started. Or, we're going to start this topic, have some preliminary discussions, and we'll likely have a few more meetings in the future. So you notice how the second one is really more drawn out, slower pace, setting the stage that this is going to be the first of a few meetings. So we don't have to rush. Okay, we have some time. It's going to be iterative. All right. So using word cues and tone of voice helps to set expectations for your stakeholders in advance. It helps to set the mood and tone that it's okay to talk. If we're going to have a few more meetings in the future, we're going to be more deliberate there, that we want you to talk. And one of the things that I find personally helpful is the empathy, appreciation, demand stack. And tone means everything. There was one project that I worked for it was a global bank, actually, and the project manager was known to be assertive and even aggressive, but also known to get the job done. And the project team would murmur, it's not her words that was the problem, but her tone. When are you completing your requirements? She said to the senior vice president. And instead of answering the question, the senior VP addressed her abruptness. I don't like your tone. So the project manager was quite shocked that she had been singled out for her tone, since her question was reasonable. I mean, it is. When are you going to get your requirements done? But in retrospect, perhaps the project manager could have employed a softer and longer lead in to the question using empathy and appreciation, having that stack. Empathy, appreciation, and then the demand, what you want. So, for example, for the project manager, maybe it looks something like this. To the VP, you must be so busy, and I appreciate all of your guidance on this project. I'm wondering when you'll have a chance to submit your requirements. Isn't that a better tone than, when are you completing your requirements? So empathy wins over everything else. When you acknowledge that somebody else is having a hard time and is really busy, you're creating a space inside them for you. You're building a relationship. And like it or not, people do things for people they like. That's how the world works. And a busy person will set aside more time for the person they like, who appreciates and values them and is empathetic to their situation. We set the tone. So we need to be mindful of ourselves and how we appear to other people. If we are open, smiling, engaging, if you walked into the room and saw this fella, you would have a different tone, mood, and mindset than if you saw this group of people, because their mood and tone and likely associated words creates trust and openness. And stakeholders would feel more comfortable to talk about their needs with them. We set the tone. Number 2 is about structuring smartly. And this is about structuring our communication to our stakeholders to verbally and visually guide them in the direction that we want. Part of the reason that stakeholders don't talk enough or talk too much sometimes is that the meetings are not structured. So let's take a look at this. For example, we can do a basic agenda. Here's a basic agenda, just has high-level items. And that's the beginning of some structure to help guide the stakeholders to think about what we're going to discuss. Or if we think we might run out of time, we can do a time-boxed agenda where the time for each agenda item is very clear. And this allows stakeholders to know that we don't have 2 hours to discuss business needs, and they can prepare for that mentally. And it shapes how they think about the content and discussion. We can also add names to the agenda. I mean, isn't that a clear hint that we want stakeholders to talk? Okay, so who's responsible for talking about that item? When you send this agenda in advance, your stakeholders can prepare for their items in advance. So even before your meeting begins, your meeting is off to a great start. You can also add the detail of each agenda item. So this does 2 things. It encourages people to talk because they know what they're supposed to talk about, but it also forms constraints around the conversation. So in the introduction, talking about name, role, department, and not our hobbies like soccer. But sometimes the meeting is about that. Sometimes we do want to, in an icebreaker, know about our soccer or favorite hobbies. But here it's forming constraints about and directing them about what we want them to talk about. So very simple technique. The different kinds of styles of agenda creates a different mood and tone in the meeting. And the more specific you get, like this one, the more it creates constraints over the freedom of discussion. Sometimes you want this, sometimes you don't. Other times you want a looser agenda that is more organic and free form. So for example, when you're meeting stakeholders for the first time or trying to develop a relationship, you don't want your meeting to be time boxed or so constrained because it impacts the flow of the meeting and to naturally grow that relationship. You can't really develop a relationship on a stopwatch. So what is the purpose of your meeting? Structure it decisively based on your objectives and stakeholder needs to help encourage stakeholders to talk. Another thing about encouraging stakeholders to talk is the question, order, and organization of the interview. There's all kinds of different ways to organize the questions in your interview session. The organization actually matters a lot, and it depends on your goals. And if you choose the wrong organization of your questions, or you don't choose at all, then it could lead to some very ineffective sessions. We can even use multiple methods in the same interview. Maybe you're allowing for some free-form venting in the first half, and then simple to complex progression in the next. We want people to talk, and so we want them to be comfortable. We want to present questions and hold our sessions in a way that makes them feel comfortable and gives us some quick wins, okay? So low-hanging fruit. Can you have some quick successes with your stakeholders in terms of getting information from them? Well, you can with, for example, overview questions about what they do in their job. What do they like about their job? Okay. If you're organizing by easy to contentious questions, then it's much better than contentious than easy, right? Because if you ask contentious questions first, you might not get to the easy ones because you might have that wall and that barrier built up with the stakeholder. Same for simple to complex. Get the simple questions out of the way and then get into the complex ones. And during that time, you're building that rapport with the stakeholders. There's also just a logic. I mean, problem then solution. We definitely wouldn't want to talk about the solution and then the problem. We want to have relationship building ones first. You can mix and match. You can combine these as you need to in order to facilitate the stakeholders talking. That's what we're concerned about, because we are only as good as the information that we get from people, and the more comfortable they are, the more we're going to get. So what if we are not getting the information? We can ask the same information in a different way. It might elicit a different response. So for example, what are your pain points versus what are some of the parts of the system that aren't working that well? If I ask people, what are your pain points, when the developers who created the system are in the room, I'm likely not to get as good of an answer as what are some of the parts of the system that aren't working that well? Or better yet, what do you wish you could have for change for your future system? Okay. Very even kind of a question. And it's a very deliberate wording to elicit a better response. And we don't always need to ask the variation of the question in the same session. We can let some time go by. We can ask somebody else the same question if we're not getting it from somebody else. Okay, so we all want to have these backup questions as an alternate route. And just like processes, we have the main process, we have alternate exception paths. Okay, and if your first attempt at a question doesn't work, then you try an alternate format with somebody else, maybe. The third thing that I want to talk about is being visual. Now, what does being visual have to do with getting stakeholders to talk? We learn in different ways. Some people learn by listening, by talking. Other people learn by seeing something visually, by reading. Other people learn by doing. These are the kinesthetics, the mechanics in the family. Very small number here. There's other ways to learn as well. These are just the three main ones. Your stakeholders, just like us, could be strong in one way and weak in another. So why does this matter when we're having our elicitation sessions? It matters because if your stakeholders absorb information visually, but all we do is 100% talking in our meetings without any PowerPoint or something to look at, then they might absorb very little of what we say. Like me, for example, I'm almost 100% visual. And why does this matter? Because if we are asking them a question and they don't absorb what you're saying, especially if it's a long, complicated kind of a concept, then they're really at a disadvantage to try and talk, right? Because they didn't fully absorb what you said in the first place. They might do it the wrong way. They might say something wrong, might go down the wrong track because they just didn't absorb it. And maybe they're confused because they didn't fully understand. Really important to recognize the diversity of the people in the audience if we want information from them and if we want them to talk, which of course we do. So how can we combat this? Use visual and verbal communication for everything that you do. When you have a meeting, have verbal and visual. And we always have verbal anyway in a meeting, don't we? But it's about adding the visuals. It's about having the transcript. It's about having the CC. It's just providing a different way for input of the information so that we get a better output. That's really what that's about. And visual can be anything. Process maps. It can be you sharing your screen, showing requirements in Excel or DevOps. And this enables stakeholders to talk more because you're facilitating better communication. And if they look away from their phone, as we often find ourselves doing, they can still be part of the conversation because they can jump back easily into it. This keeps stakeholders engaged, focused, gives them something for their eyes to do. They can also see by watching you take notes, they can see if you've caught up to them verbally. So if they are talking too fast or too much, this is a nonverbal way of managing the pace and flow of conversation. So be visual as much as you can, be visual. Number 4 is prompt diligently. And what does that mean? Prompting our stakeholders. We need to guide our stakeholders in the direction that we want to get us the information that we need, to encourage them to talk. So what can we do? Well, we can be direct. Can you be more specific? But that doesn't work for everything. We can assume that there's more. So if the stakeholder stops talking because they've answered the question, you can say, what else? And that puts in place the assumption that there's more. And that is a very effective way to get the stakeholders to keep talking, which I love. Empathy. I can see how that's difficult. Okay. And nonverbal, nodding your head. Because if I'm not talking, then they can talk. And saying their name. There's some studies around this, around how effective it is to say somebody's name to get them engaged. You can also repeat their statement, but as a question. So the current system doesn't have any reports. If your stakeholder says that, you say, the current system doesn't have any reports. And then silence. Okay? They can talk more. And matching their tone. If they are frustrated, and stakeholders sometimes are because they're put into different positions or they're going through different pain points, it's hard to be a stakeholder. Match their tone, recognize their tone. So if they say, the current system doesn't have any reports, hearing that frustration, match their tone. The current system doesn't have any reports. Okay? That's an empathy. It's a relationship building. I mean, imagine if somebody said, the current system doesn't have any reports. And you said, okay, I'll write that down. Okay? It doesn't show a lot of empathy there and recognizing what they're going through. The 5 whys, very popular business analysis technique. Why is that? Well, why did that happen? Why did that get down to the 5th why? And silence as a strategy is, I mean, I love using silence as a strategy. People get a little uncomfortable, maybe they're not used to it. They start fidgeting, and then they start filling me up with information because people don't like empty air. Sometimes stakeholders talk a little bit too much. Not often, though, I find. I'm often the other side trying to get them to talk more. But there's just some very quick ways how to deal with that. And that is, one of them is interrupting them with a compliment. The compliment has to be honest and ethical and authentic. But it looks like this. So Ralph is talking. He made his point. I documented it, and he keeps talking because he's super excited about the topic. But it's time to move the meeting forward. We have a lot to go through. So here's what I say to Ralph. Ralph, you made an excellent point about how this system lacks important auditing features, and it reminds me that we haven't yet talked about reporting. And then I transition, okay? Or we can summarize their point, thank them, and then transition. We can also put items in the parking lot to discuss later. And maybe that looks like this. Thank you for your important point about the auditing features. We need a deep dive into that, so let me set up another meeting about that. And then transition, okay? So number 5 is getting to know them, getting to know your stakeholders. You can have all the best techniques in the world, and none of them will ever be a substitute for actually getting to know your stakeholders. Because if you know them, you will know how they perform best, what time, what method, in person, by teams, in small groups, in large groups. Are they verbal or visual? When is their busiest time at work? So you can arrange a different time to meet or get their feedback. Getting to know your stakeholders will be your number 1 success factor at work. And how do you get to know them? Ask them. Ask them what their working preferences are. Go to coffee with them. We can also make some good guesstimates based on the job that they do. You know, what personalities do we assign to accountants versus sales? Introverted versus extroverted personalities, maybe. Quiet versus talkative. And it's a starting point. It's not everything, but it's a starting point. Asking other people about them, our team members, Googling them. There's lots of different ways to get to know your stakeholders. And it all begins with asking them. So in summary, set the mood and tone with your stakeholders. Structure smartly to guide their focus. Be visual and appeal to how they absorb information. Prompt diligently to encourage or discourage discussion. And get to know your stakeholders. So you don't have to walk that tightrope alone, and stakeholders will talk. And you can walk with your stakeholders instead. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any further questions. I'm happy to take questions here as well before we stop the recording. Any questions out there? Any comments? And I'm
Hello.
sorry, can't see the chat. I'm sorry.
Hello. Are you able to hear me?
We
I
can
can.
hear.
Okay, perfect. So first I wanted to acknowledge the space that you made for everyone to feel comfortable and acknowledge their interests and their perspective. I think that would definitely help them to consider what is being stated, whether good or bad, and it also allows them the opportunity to feel like a person of interest, like you care about their needs, you care about their wants, and you're going to help them capitalize on that. So I just wanted to make that point that I definitely appreciate your tips today.
Oh, thank you very much, China. I think you nailed it, and I can tell already that you do this in your sessions, and I'm sure you really get some great results.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi, I'm actually, I think at the beginning of your presentation, you stated that you were a journalism major
Mhm.
or a journalist. I also majored in journalism from the University of Florida. So it's a more personal question, but
Items.
oh, what was it? Oh, no worries. I was curious as to how you made the jump from journalism to what you're doing now.
So that's a great question because it was a very deliberate jump for me.
Mind you.
And I thought, with my background in writing and communications and being able to research and ask questions, I thought, what could I logically go into that is the closest jump? Because I wanted to go into IT, but I thought, well, I'm not a coder, I'm not a developer, I'm not QA. Like, what could I do? What's the closest link? And so then I started looking for jobs that had to do with writing. So I started in technical writing, first of all, and then gradually went into business analysis by starting out in procurement. So doing proposals, writing RFPs, RFQs. And that was a really good way to get into requirements, actually, because, of course, these documents are loaded with requirements. And that was a good way to do it. There's other ways to do it, and I'd be happy to chat with you on LinkedIn about that. But that's one way.
Yeah, I'll definitely send a connection over. I kind of made a jump as well. My journey here was a little bit different, but I found myself having to sort of lean on to, okay, I have communications experience, I have journalism experience. What can I do with that that's going to be something that's not a journalist or a reporter or anything like that? So it's been a journey, but I'm glad I found this group.
It's an awesome group.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pamela, I'd like to ask you about using prototyping and to elicit requirements. I think prototyping is a great way for the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic people to all kind of come together. And I found that it's been extremely successful in my efforts, down to taking them on a Gemba walk to see, actual, let's get to where the work is actually done so that they can use all of those different abilities of taking in information as well as providing information. What do you think about prototyping?
I love that. I love prototyping. It puts something in front of them to think about. I mean, it's pretty hard to dig deep and draw and get out information when there's nothing in front of you as a starter for conversation and elicitation. So I think that's a terrific idea.
I have a strategy I'm going to share with y'all. This is secret, so don't tell anybody. This has been recorded. Sometimes I get it wrong on purpose so that they can correct me, especially if they're not engaging and they haven't been engaging. If I get it a little bit wrong so that they can say, wait a minute, we're going to do this other thing. It gets them to speak up whenever they weren't speaking up before.
So I tell people that I'm the village idiot. And I am. I am the quietest person in the room. I'm the one who knows the least amount of information. And I'm the village idiot. Fill me up.
Right, right. Awesome. What other questions do we have for Pam? Pamela, I see that you've given this talk a couple of other places. What are the interesting questions you've received whenever you've given the talk previously?
Well, this is an interesting question in itself because a lot of times the questions that I get are, how do we deal with difficult stakeholders? It's the number one question that I get. And I've spoken honestly all over the world. And this summer I was in Paris and Amsterdam and Brussels. It's the number one question that I get. And I use the same answer that I do for interviews, which is that I find there's not difficult stakeholders, there's difficult situations. And when you employ that stack that I was talking about empathy and appreciation, that goes such a long way to diffuse somebody who's having a bad day. I mean, this is a stressful time. This is a stressful world. And if you wear empathy on your sleeve, and it's the first thing that you have when you walk into the room is empathy and building that relationship and building that rapport. I mean, you get unbelievable results from other people and people willing to go the extra mile to help you out and give you that information.
I agree. One of the things that I think we overlook, it's like we learned this when we were doing stakeholder analysis, but we forget it, is learn what our stakeholders' goals are. And if we can, also learn what their fears are. It makes you be able to be empathetic in such a deeper way and align their needs and their goals with your project in ways that you can't do if you don't have that information.
Yeah, I love that. What are your stakeholders' goals? I love that.
If we can help them reach their goals with the project that they've been resisting, they won't resist any longer. And if we can help them avoid their fears with the project that they've been resisting, we will get them on our side a lot faster.
Yes. And, sometimes you don't even have to state the fears or have them disclose their fears, but you can get to know their fears. And if you address their fears with nothing being said, then it saves face and it allows people to feel more comfortable. And it's a win-win. It really is.
Right. I agree with you. Okay, folks, we've got 20 people on the call. Okay, 19 now. Anybody else have a question? This is your chance.
I'm sorry. Perva has a good one in the chat that was submitted.
Okay, there it is. Thank you. How to handle situations where the stakeholder is inexperienced and can't contribute to a discussion, but without their thoughts, it's hard to know what they don't know.
I guess I would ask, why can't they contribute? A question with a question. How about that? I am a journalist.
Okay, I can give you 3 situations whenever I've seen people that they felt like they couldn't contribute. One was cultural. They felt like they've only worked there for 6 months. Everybody else had more seniority. They shouldn't even speak up. But we needed their information and we didn't know how to help them. How would you handle that situation?
Cultural is a big thing. It's a sensitive topic. I'm in an intercultural marriage, so I've learned a lot over the last 10 years. And sometimes it's not so intuitive to figure out what to do. But asking people to speak slower, that helps a lot. And in fact, that was given to me by one person who was undergoing a lot of kinds of issues experienced by himself. Speaking slower, asking to speak slower is one. Getting comments after is another one. So allowing that, not everybody can on demand say something and be part of the discussion. But if you allow time afterwards as well to collect comments, that might make people feel more comfortable. Having a lot of visuals makes people feel comfortable. And I love the idea of the prototype there because it gives somebody, a straw man or whatever to look at and to touch and to provide a different mode of communication. I think that's good as well. But I think people feel empathy. I think people feel that, and there's always a solution when you start with that.
Okay, the next one is, what if they are extremely introverted or they have social anxiety?
That's tough in a group, isn't it? Having social anxiety, wondering if every word that you're going to say is going to be judged. It's very, very difficult. And for them, I would provide an alternate way to provide their comments and their requirements. And if you're conducting one-on-one sessions, if you are collecting the information, over email and then clarifying. I mean, there's lots of people in this kind of situation. There's lots of different communication issues and struggles. And I think that the more we provide alternatives, the better information that we're going to get.
Okay, And the third situation, you don't know, but you have the strong sense that they're in an emotional crisis. They have just found out their mother is dying, their cousin got stabbed, something is going on, but they're putting on a brave face and they're coming to work, but they're not engaging in the meeting as you would expect. How would you handle that?
That's really tough. The way that I handle that is through mitigation. So identifying at the very beginning of the project, who's your main stakeholder and who's your backup. And then you can go to the backup if something tragic like that is happening.
You don't always have the information, you know, they
Mhm.
don't come to work and announce it. So you have to kind of watch body language and were they contributing before and they're not contributing now. Sometimes you have to go to them afterwards and say, hey, I noticed you're really quiet. Is there anything I can do to help? If they confide in you, you cannot break that trust. If they don't confide in you and they just say, I've got a lot on my mind, say, you know what, I understand. Do you want to continue with the project? I mean, if that is your role, you gotta figure out what your role is there, but you can still come alongside them and give them empathy and help them feel like somebody cares. It's more than just a project. We are a bunch of people and every single one of us has value.
Well said.
Okay, any other questions for Pamela? Okay, in that case, Pamela has a few other things, but we're going to stop the recording here so she can talk to us about the other topics. Let me stop recording.